Now, my husband and I have 2 girls. They're grown women now. But when they were little and we had them, we really wanted to raise them to love Jesus. And we knew that to do that, we were going to need some help. My husband and I came from very functional homes, but we did not have the spiritual element inside of our home. So we weren't sure what that looked like and what we needed to do. So we started looking at our church, seeing if there was people that we could turn to help us raise our children. And a lot of our young people were really struggling with their relationship with the Lord. So we decided the best place to go was on our knees and ask the Lord, how do we raise children to love you? We realized it was going to be intentional. It would take a lot of work, prayer, patience, perseverance, commitment, and a lot of change.
If you're a Christian and a parent, no doubt you have had the same question. How can I help my children to truly become committed followers of Jesus Christ? And how can I prepare them for His soon coming? I'm Scott Ritzema. Welcome to How to Raise the Remnant. Recently, we released a seminar entitled Raising the Remnant, where we delved into the latest research on Christian parenting, looking at how the spiritually strong young adults of today were raised. We now know what works and what doesn't, but some questions still remain. How do we apply these findings from this research? And shall we delve deeper into the issues raised in the recent research? In How to Raise the Remnant, we will turn to the experts. You're going to hear insights from author and psychologist Dr. Donna Habenecht, speakers and parenting experts Paul and Carolyn Rain of Restoration International, Pastor Don McLafferty of In Discipleship, a visionary leader in discipling children to Christ, Dr. Kay Kuzma, author of over 35 books and hundreds of articles. Author Karen Holford, an expert on practical strategies for discipling children. And Cinda Osterman, a personal friend of mine who I've done seminars with on parenting. I've learned a tremendous amount from her and all of these speakers. Stick around for the 2 episodes. You will see things that the Lord wants to bring to the attention of this generation so that we can raise a generation of children who will have their foundation on the Bible, who can stand through the crises of the last days. My prayer is with every family watching this. And don't forget to view Disc 3 with all of the bonus features. View this material with your spouse. Get that pause button ready. Pause it, pray about it, discuss it, and apply it to your unique situation. May God be with you. Before we look at any parenting strategies, we have to begin with a basic question. Who are our children? Many times we forget that they are actually younger members of the Lord's family. They are children of God, just like us. We have the same Father, and in fact, our children are our brothers and sisters in Christ. So the question is, am I treating my children with the respect that is due to an image bearer of God? Do I use the golden rule and treat them as I would want to be treated myself?
It's not just the amount of time, but it's how quality. You don't want to say, how come you forgot to brush your teeth and I can't believe you're late again? I didn't work over a hot stove just to have you nibble away your appetite like that. Well, the idea is we don't even think about it and we treat our children with disrespect. And we don't realize how important it is to respect even our tiniest children instead of just grabbing them by the arm and pulling them to one side or saying, shut up, or whatever we might say to them. We need to stop and think, what kind of an example are we being? Because your children will tend to treat you with the same respect that you treat them.
To model kindness and respect. Kindness and respect is really the bedrock of our home. And do we do it perfectly all the time? Absolutely not. We need a lot of the grace of Jesus to remember it. But kindness and respect is something that's very important to us as family members in our home. And it's something that God keeps reminding me that I need to model. But I'm reminded that I need to treat them, even in that moment when we're disappointed in a certain activity that they did or a reaction that they had, I must treat them with kindness and respect even in that moment. They do not deserve my impatience. They don't deserve for me to disrespect them. So this is an opportunity for me to lavish on them kindness and respect, even in that moment. I know the way I treat the people in our lives, not only in my home, but in my neighborhood, in town when I'm doing business. This is teaching my children how to treat people. If they see dad and mom respecting people that are hard to respect, people that are hard to love, they will grow up knowing this is just what Jesus does all the time, and he wants us to do this too.
In fact, let's go back to Jericho. There was a little guy who wanted to get through the crowd to see Jesus, and nobody respected him. You know the name, Zacchaeus. So what did he have to do? He climbed a tree. Well, nobody respected him because he had stolen from all of them, because he was a tax collector and he took more than he should. How did Jesus treat Zacchaeus? Well, in that culture, the most important thing you could do to show honor and esteem and respect to a person was to go to their house to eat. Do you think any of those people that were in that crowd would have ever gone to Zacchaeus' house to eat? No way. But what did Jesus say to Zacchaeus? Zacchaeus, I'm coming to your house to eat today. I bet Zacchaeus nearly fell out of the sycamore tree. You know, he was so shocked. But Jesus gave Zacchaeus what he needed. And when he was filled up with that kind of respect, which he didn't deserve, he hadn't earned it, but it was needed. All of us need to be respected as human beings, as children of God. And when Jesus showed that respect, he was so filled up, he said immediately, I'm going to give back everything that I've taken, plus. And that's what happens when you show that respect to your children.
Parents who are too harsh, they are very demanding. They're thinking mostly of themselves and their own personal convenience, not the growth of their child. And they punish very strictly for the least little thing that goes wrong. And they tend to yell and scream. They don't develop a good relationship with their kids at all, because they're too severe and they do it in the wrong way. There's much research on authoritative parents who do it the right way. Much. And all the research shows that authoritative parents grow children with strong moral characters, children who have a strong spiritual life, children who become leaders, children who are competent in what they do, and they become good authoritative parents themselves. And so being an authoritative parent is where you want to be. That's how you tell where you're supposed to be. Too soft, the kids run the place. Too harsh, the kids are almost afraid of you. Just right, you have consistent limits, you communicate them, you talk about them, you're reasonable, they understand the consequences, and you carry on because they understand.
The question of how do our children respect us is a big one, but clearly if they see us respecting them, respect elicits respect. If we are just bossing them around, don't do this, do that, you shouldn't do this, and we're not showing them respect as a person, they are going to struggle to respect us. And this is particularly the case with teenage boys. They feed off of respect. And so parents, we've got to learn to respect them, respect their ideas, respect some of their thoughts. Don't just cut them down because we have more experience and we know that won't work. Let's say, hey, let's try it.
It probably comes as no surprise that most parents do not have a biblical basis for parenting. We don't have biblical principles upon which we base everything that we do as parents. In America today, the research shows that we are generally just parenting by taking cues from how other people do it or how we were parented. I don't think it's any surprise that this is not working. We're exposing our children then to worldly influences in media and among peers. And the question remains, how can we do this differently?
The best way to know that we're not parenting the way we do just to keep in with the expectations of extended family members is really to have some very solid principles for why we do what we do with our young people, with our children. You know, the Bible, of course, is the best place to go, and there's great books out there on parenting. My favorite is a book called Child Guidance, and when my children were little particularly, I read that over and over again to really establish in my mind why I wanted to do the things I wanted to with my young people. And then when we would go to visit extended family members, it wasn't so difficult to be able to stand firm and say, no, you know, this is what we're going to do, whether it's, you know, maybe we're planning on, we've always had them go to bed at a certain time, and now when they're really little, we don't just want to go break that, or giving them certain things to eat, or whatever it is, but make it, have really firm principles that you can stand on. Then when you're there, you're not going to compromise, and you can know for surety that you're not just raising your children to everybody else's expectations.
At that time, we had a TV in our home, and our daughter was about 2, and she'd wake up every morning asking for the tea, and she wanted to watch Big Bird. And we thought if she could only love Jesus as much as she loved that bird, we would be happy. So we sold our TV, we went through all our books, we went through all our music, we went through all our videos, we went through everything that we thought would hinder our children in their Christian experience, and we got rid of it.
You're a good influence. They have good friends, which I think you need to be involved in helping them choose their friends, so that the influence is positive on the kids.
Guarding our children's hearts in the world that we live in, particularly media, can be a very difficult task because, you know, we can shut off the Wi-Fi at home, but they go to the neighbors or they go into town, or so the best way is to win the hearts of our children, to fill their lives up with stuff that's better than media, you know, going on bike rides together, going on vacations together, doing great things together, and then also showing them some of the dangers of the media. We have, as a family, really enjoyed that Media on the Brain that Belt of Truth put out. It is fantastic because it taught our children the dangers, and they have no desire for all of that. So if we can win their hearts, we guard their hearts.
Another thing that we decided we need to do is country living. We need to move out and get away from the environment in which they were in. We wanted a slower pace life than what we were in, and we thought country living would do that. Also, it would provide a way for us to grow our own food and put in fruit trees, because we knew that our income was going down and we needed a way to save money. We also wanted to homeschool our children, and we actually did. We bought 5 acres of land and we built a little schoolhouse on it, and our children went to school. So I schooled my children, homeschooled them, and that was a real blessing for us.
It is crucial and essential that we shelter our children from the onslaught of the enemy, from worldly influences. However, many parents who take these appropriate precautions many times start doing their children's thinking for them. And it is essential, especially with our older children, that we teach them and train them and help them and coach them to become thinkers so that they are able to follow Christ on their own, make decisions on their own, and discern between right and wrong on their own. As a high school teacher, it has always been my goal and objective to help the students to become thinkers, not mere reflectors of other men's thoughts. How can we do this in our homes?
Teaching our children to think for themselves. We've got to give them opportunity to think for themselves. It's so easy as parents when we have more experience to say, oh, do this. Oh, don't try that, it doesn't work. Do this. I've tried that when I was a kid, it doesn't work. And yes, they will listen to some of that, but we've got to let them start making their own decisions when they're young and have bigger decisions as they get older. Of course, we want to step in if we know they are going to make a drastically wrong decision in their teenage years. If they're going to make a decision and you think, you know, this isn't going to come out right, we can let them make that wrong decision and let them learn from their mistakes, as long as it's not going to cost anything, you know, critical. So give them room to make decisions and be a coach for them. Guide them. You say, this is my experience, but let them make decisions. Sometimes our children say, you tell me and I'll be happy to do it. And we will back away from that and say, no, we want you to make the decision.
I remember when my daughter got into her teen years, she was really struggling with some of the things that we were putting into practice for her, that we believed in very modest dress, and so we dressed her modestly. And she started noticing in her teens that the girlfriends around her were wearing things different, and she was really struggling with looking different than her friends. And we always felt like when our girls were studying and questioning things in their life, they should write out their studies, because later on they may need to go back to those. And so she had done a study on dress, and at the end of her study, after she told me what God had taught her, I said, from now on, when people ask you why you dress the way you dress, you don't tell them it's because of your mother. Now you say it's because of you, because now you have studied it out. This is your commitment and your decision for the Lord. So when she came to me questioning her dress, I asked her, well, what new light have you found in God's Word? And she said she hadn't. She was actually making those changes just because of her friends. So I asked her if she felt like that was a wise decision. And of course she did not, but she didn't know what else to do. She was really struggling. So I said, well, tomorrow morning you can give me a decision. I want you to pray about it. I want you to study about it. And tomorrow we'll talk about it. During the night, I knelt at her bed and I prayed all night. And not that I didn't sleep some. I'd fall asleep and wake back up and pray for her because I knew it was a battle. The next morning when she woke up and after her devotion time, she came to me and she told me, I'm going to do this out of principle. I don't feel it, but I know this is what God wants me to do. I'm going to stay with my dress. And so we made her new clothes, and after she wore them, God gave her the feelings in her heart for them too. And that was the last time she decided she'd ever make a decision because of her peers, that she was always going to walk in the Lord's ways.
When our children are little, we do need to be very much involved in every aspect of their lives. Not so much do we want to micromanage their lives, but we do need to help them to learn how to make wise choices. So when our children were little, I wouldn't just give them a wide open door to wear anything they wanted to wear out of the closet, for example. I would say you can choose, out of these three things and these three things, a shirt and a skirt or shirt and pants, whatever it was they were going to wear. And so gradually they can grow, from little ones, they can grow to be able to make very wise choices, and we don't have to micromanage, even though we're very much involved in their lives. And as they get older, being alongside them, being their friend, entering into their life, and just being a part of it. So we don't necessarily have to micromanage, but we can be very much involved.
Children love to make decisions, and that's one of the things that God has put within them. They love to make decisions. Decision making basically forms who we are in terms of our character. So we say to that little 2-year-old that has just stamped his feet, I'm sorry, you need to take a bath. No, I hate taking a bath. Well, you need to take a bath. Do you want bubbles or boats? Bubbles or boats? Now, did you notice what I did? I didn't say okay, you can have the choice whether you take the bath or not. You don't give them a choice if it's in a no-choice situation. But you give them a choice that is an acceptable choice within the no-choice situation. You got to take a bath, but you can choose. Do you want bubbles or boats? Boats or bubbles? And it's amazing how these little ones are so excited about making that decision that they march off to the bathtub. Remember, children need to make decisions, and instead of pushing the string in the way you want it to go, I don't have a string here, but if you can imagine pushing that string, it doesn't go nice and straight in the direction you want it to go. What happens is it gets all buckled up under the pressure of being pushed. So you have to back up a little bit, start persuading, start listening, start sharing, start encouraging. And it's amazing how children can overcome that number 2 reason, that need. They want to make decisions, they want to be in control, when you begin to understand and meet that need and allow them to make some decisions.
Now, while we do have the ultimate goal of teaching our young people to follow Christ on their own, we must first have laid the foundation of obedience. In fact, obedience is the first lesson in the Christian life.
Keep your words very simple. Don't do that. Please come. Very simple words. And make obedience easy. Don't ask questions as much as make statements. Because if you say to your 2-year-old, would you like to put on your coat so we can go outside? What will your 2-year-old say? No. No is what they say to almost everything then. And instead, so you will say, you'll just say, Tony, let's put on our coats and go outside to play. In the meantime, you have the coat in your hand, you start putting one arm in. And it helps kids if we have a routine and they know what's going to happen next. Kids thrive with a routine and their life is predictable. And then, when we're trying to teach obedience, we want to pair our love with obedience. Mommy wants you to do this because she loves you. You want to do it because Mommy loves you. We need lots of prayer for the Holy Spirit to influence our baby and our toddler. In Desire of Ages, Ellen White gives us a wonderful statement. If we live in communion with God, we too may expect the divine Spirit to mold our little ones even from their earliest moments. Isn't that neat? Mold them from their earliest moments if we pray and we keep in communion with God.
Jesus living in their heart can be the conscience that can help them make wise decisions and can give them the strength of character they need to have the internal control to say no to negative things, negative peers, bad habits, drugs, things that hurt them. Too many times our children think they have to be good all by themselves. Too many times they feel that I can't do it. It's amazing when you begin early sharing with your children. You always have a friend. Jesus is always right beside you. Whenever you're scared, you can just say, remember to sing the little song, Jesus loves me, this I know. Wonderful theology, you know, that for children to learn early. And there was a little boy that was having real temper tantrum problems, kindergartner. And his teacher said, you know, it's really tough for you to learn how to not hurt others and say things that you're embarrassed about later. But you know, Jesus can live in your heart if you ask him to live in your heart. And he can help you have that control that you want to have. And she said, I'll help you. If you come a few minutes early every day, I'll pray with you. And this was a Christian school, so it was very acceptable. And do you know, within 3 or 4 weeks, this little boy was saying to his mother, who was a non-Christian, Mommy, I have Jesus helping me, and now I'm a better boy in school, and I you know, it's just amazing.
If we live in communion with God, and we live his way, we can expect his divine Spirit to mold our little ones, even from their earliest moments. We are teaching our children to love God by the ordinary things that we do. There is a wonderful statement by Ellen White in Desire of Ages, page 515, that really summarizes how we help our children learn to love God. As the mother teaches her children to obey her because they love her, she is teaching them the first lessons in the Christian life. The mother's love, and we could say the father's love also, represents to the child the love of Christ. And the little ones who trust and obey their mother or father are learning to trust and obey the Savior. Those are the foundational spiritual lessons. And we're doing it by the way we relate to our children when they're little.
But if the kid does not have internal control, the ability to choose and choose wisely, it will all fall away. when he's faced with a situation that his mom or dad or another authority figure is not in control.
Now, to make this foundation, there are two things we want to teach our children. We want to teach them self-control and empathy. Empathy means I understand how you feel about this. I have an idea that you're feeling sad today, or you're feeling happy today, or you understand what the other person is feeling. We must begin very early on these. So we begin, first of all, with that bond, by bonding securely with our baby and our toddler, because bonding is the foundation for all of this. Bonding doesn't occur, then conscience doesn't develop. It's the basic foundation for the thing. And so bonding is very important, and so we're going to provide our basic needs that our kid needs in abundance.
One of the most interesting findings of the recent research is that the successful parents spend enormous quantities of time with their children. In fact, parenting is, to them, their most important job in life. It's their primary role and identity in their lives. They spend hours per day in dialogue with their children. That's how spiritually strong young adults are raised. But unfortunately, today, children are not spending very much time with their parents at all. In fact, they're spending 53 hours a week in front of screens, spending many hours at school, of course, and then just entertaining themselves to a great degree. And this begins even in the toddler years, where the kid is left in front of a TV screen or just left to entertain and play by himself. The question is, can we do something different? Can we be like these successful parents? How can we just do life with our children, do projects together, bring them into the everyday duties of our lives?
So when we're actually working and work with our children, we have a lot of opportunities. We have a lot of opportunities to teach logical consequence. We have opportunities to teach responsibility.
Getting our children involved in family activities and chores, I think, is essential. I mean, we are supposed to be a family firm.
Right, and that starts when they're really little. You know, when our children were really small, we would give them a little duster or a little washcloth to fold or different things like that. And you know, when they're really little, they love to be involved.
I remember Hannah, she used to go around la 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 doing the dusting. You remember that?
Right, and then they wanted to be involved in the kitchen. Typically, little children will want to be involved in activities around the house before you want them to be.
And mums don't want them to be because
they make such a mess.
Yeah, mum has to clear it up.
Right. So, I pushed past that when they were little, and they came into the kitchen and they learned with a plastic knife how to cut lettuce and cucumber and all these things. And now I've got 2 teenagers. If I don't choose to go into the kitchen and cook anything, I don't have to.
For a week. Or a month.
Oh, a year. If I didn't choose to, I wouldn't have to, because my 15 and 17-year-old boy and girl have learned how in the kitchen ever since they were little.
Well?
Oh yeah. He does half the kitchen work and she does the other half. And of course I get involved, but I don't have to if I didn't want to. So just want to encourage you, start when they're young, capitalize on their enthusiasm, because they will have it. But if you don't, leave it 2 or 3 years, and just about the time you're thinking, man, I need some help around the place, all that enthusiasm is gone. And then it's really hard to get that enthusiasm back.
This is an interesting one, because we tend to wait to trust our children with responsibilities until we know they can handle them well. But what happens is children are eager to do tasks around the house that they're not really that capable of doing, but they love it. For example, ask your 9-year-old to wash the dishes, couldn't care less. Your 3-year-old can hardly wait to get up on the big stool and get her hands in the dish water, you know. Not that capable, but that willing. So what we need to do with our children is we need to trust them with responsibilities. So if you can trust your children to do amazing things, if you encourage them, challenge them, make it fun, work with them.
And so we want our children to take responsibility. Well, a child will only take responsibility as we give responsibility to them. So it's an opportunity to have your child work. Now, we did not pay our children to work at the jobs that were their jobs, cleaning up their room, helping with parts of the house. That was something they were supposed to do, their toys, pick those up. So those were their responsibilities. We did not pay them. They could make extra money by working outside with their dad on the cars, washing cars, maybe doing my windows, so they could earn some money if they wanted to. But we wanted them to be part of our family.
I do think it's really important for children to be involved in helping the household run smoothly. And I think we have an important role to play before they even get to the age where they can help. And that is one of making it seem really fun to do household chores. I think often parents make the mistake of going, oh no, I have to vacuum the floor today. Oh no, I have all this work to do. Oh no, I hate washing up. And I think that can often rub off on the children. So I wonder what difference it would make if we started to say how much we enjoy vacuuming, what we like about it, how we make it fun by sucking up all the bits of dust we can find and make it into a game. Not that all the household chores should be made into games, but I think our positive attitude towards household chores and our own work does help our children to shape their attitudes towards it too. And the more brighter and lighter and fun and positive we approach our household chores, then that will rub off on our children for sure. I think it's also important to find things the children can do well. So it needs to be within their ability and not too big. And the children need to be able to ask for help when something feels too difficult, because it can be really lonely for a child to feel they have to do a job and they don't know where to start and it all feels too big. So we need to be there alongside them, just as God is alongside us, ready to help us whenever we need to. So I think these things can really help us when we're helping our children think about doing more household chores.
How do I know when my children are ready for new challenges? That's easy. When kids have mastered a challenge, they generally begin to act bored, slightly bored. They're ready for another challenge. So whenever you see the least bit of boredom setting in, probably they need a new challenge.
While it certainly is the ideal to live life with our children and develop that connection and maintain that connection, many parents find themselves in a situation where necessity dictates that they must work. So if you are a working parent, how can you make the best of the time that you do have available to your children?
Take advantage of have-to times. From the time the child is very small, when you're diapering that child, sing a little song as you're diapering, tickle his tummy, play with him, make it a fun experience. So instead of saying, stop wiggling, or just listening to your soap opera in the background as you're doing this with the child, take advantage of have-to times. When you're chauffeuring your kid to school, instead of turning on the car radio, unless you're maybe using that for character building and you have a character story that you want to share with a kid that's on a CD, talk to your child. Share with your child. Tell stories about your own life. Your child will love to hear your stories and how much trouble you got into, and the object lessons that you can pull from these stories. So take time, make sure your have-to time is really good quality time. But there are a couple more times you need to make sure you're there. One is performance time. Kids love to perform. You won't be able to see your kid in the choir of 50 kids up on the stage, but you know what? Your kid will find you in an audience of 2,000. That's how important it is to give that child your time when he is performing. And that might mean taking time off of work just to make sure that you are there.
When I was a kid, the most important thing to me was my baseball and basketball games. And I could count on it every time. Although my dad worked hard to support the family and was gone a lot, Every time I got up to bat, I could look in the stands and see him dressed in his white collar outfit, having rushed over to the game from work. And what a blessing. The year that I went an entire year without getting a hit, my dad was there to encourage me. 2 years later, hitting a home run and then heading to the car after the game and seeing that the front seat of the car was reserved for me and my dad was my biggest fan, cheering me on. I'll never forget these memories. Dads, you have such a power of encouragement. Your girls will know that they are beautiful inside and out by your presence, your affirmation, your time, your interest in them, your words. Your sons will know that they are strong and capable by your presence, interest, your time, your words, your affirmation. Now today I don't think competitive sports are the ideal, but whether it's the choir performance or the piano recital or whatever, that performance time is a must.
Another time that's important to be there is bedtime. But it's better if one parent at least can be there for bedtime and tuck that kid in and let him tell about his experiences through the day, and just to listen, to just do that back rub. That's an extremely important time. If you can't be there for bedtime, be there for wake-up time.
Putting the baby to bed has often been traditionally the mother's role. Well, my wife and I fit right into that mold, and for years my wife was the one that put our first son Levi to bed at night. A little while ago I realized, boy, I'm really missing out on a great opportunity to connect and bond with my son at a deeper level. And so we recently made a decision to have me follow my wife after she puts him to bed. I now go in there and we have that back rub time, that singing time, that talking time. I sing Turn Your Eyes Upon Jesus. That's been the lullaby for our children since day one. And we really are able to connect. And you know what? He absolutely loves just those 10 or 15 minutes together. He asks me every day, Dad, are you going to come in and rub my back and pray for me?
Getting our children to open up their hearts to us is something that every parent of teenagers longs for. And if that's the case, then it's not something you're going to have happen right then. It needs to be something that we have cultivated over the years if possible. And so spending time with them, entering into their world, being a part of them is so important. And you know, a great example, and we still do this, tuck your children in at night. When they're really little, you tuck them in with a hug and a kiss, but don't drop that in the later years and into the teenage years, because as they get older, often I'll sit myself on the edge of the bed and I'll just be there, and the children's hearts start to open up. They want to share things that's going on in their hearts. And so cultivating that from when they're younger, being their friend, coming alongside them, entering into their world, and not throwing a fit sometimes when they share something you don't really want to hear. That is all part of encouraging your young person to open their heart up to you.
And there's one more time that I think you should be there, and that's table time. We have found in various research that has been done that those families who sit around the table, who at least have one meal together, I'd suggest at least 2, if not 3, but at least 2, those families who sit around and talk and share, it could be a bowl that you put on the table that every kid in the family and mom and dad puts a little question or a little, maybe they've seen a magazine article, or maybe they will print something off from the internet and stick it in the bowl so that they can all talk together about various topics or subjects. Or you might want to use that time for character building and share a Bible verse that's important. But table time, talking together, is extremely important.
Again, the research finding that perhaps stood out more than any other was that these parents that had success in raising spiritually strong young adults viewed parenting as their primary job in life. They spent lots of time with their children. But we are all so busy, and many of us feel we need 2 incomes in order to support the family. And what encouragement is there for single parents?
We all have time for those things that we want to do the most. You can find the time that that child needs to know that he is special, that he is loved unconditionally, but you've got to be wise. You can't waste your time watching television, which brings nothing into the equation in terms of the child feeling good about himself.
The idea of living more economically so that we can have one of the parents, preferably the mother, at home is more difficult in our psyche than it is in our pocketbook. Once we are motivated, once we see the need for that parent at home to raise the children, then the financial challenges that we will come up against aren't as impactful because we have a will to deal with them. Let me paint a little picture. If you've got two parents out at work, they're bringing in plenty of cash, you've got plenty of money, but no time with the children, then you can go out for a meal whenever you want, but it's not an enjoyable experience because the children don't want to eat, they want to be out with their friends, and they're not having a good connection with mom and dad. But if you've got one parent at home who's won the hearts of those children, there's a good connection between parents and children, then you can go out for a meal, not as often because you had to make some financial sacrifices, but you can sit there, you can enjoy each other, and it can be a bonding experience. So I challenge you, give it a go.
When we consider staying at home as a mom to raise our children instead of being out at work, it can be a fearful thing, thinking that, what life will we have? But we need to look at the bigger picture and realize this is a short period of time, but which will have a huge impact upon the young people that we're raising, rather than somebody else raising them part-time and we do it part-time. So let's have a different perspective.
Money is an important value. Start teaching them early about the value of money, the importance of not getting into debt. What happens if you get into debt and suddenly everybody has to get a job and nobody has time for each other anymore, and it's better to live simply than with the value of simplicity.
I was very committed to parenting, and it was always the first thing, the most important thing for me. I really did not pursue a career in the way I might have. I taught elementary school in the public schools to support us. But then when our son got to the point where he was crying every day when I left, I quit. Did a little substitute teaching, did some other things. But parenting was always the most important thing I did. I did a number of other things along the way, part-time, always. And I wanted badly to go to graduate school. When our daughter, who's the younger of the two children, turned 13, she got herself a babysitting job 6 hours a day during the summer. The very day she got that job, I went over to the graduate school and enrolled because I had 6 hours a day to do that. Pursuing the career that I have had came much later.
Once again, it's not just necessarily being at home with the child that's important, but what you do with your time together. We know that working mothers, working fathers can be very effective with their children. But again, they have found that one-income families tend to do better in terms of the spiritual maturity of children. What that says is they just plain have more time for their children.
Both of us had careers, and in order for our children, we felt, to be raised for the Lord, one of us would need to stay home. And since my husband made more money, and I wanted to be home, I stayed home with my children. As I worked in other homes, it wasn't always that case. Some parents, the husband stayed home and the wife would actually work out in the field. But for me, I was able to stay home, and I'm thankful that I did. I loved my career. Some of the things that I've enjoyed the most was taking care of my children when they were growing up.
Making time for our children in this fast-paced life that we live, for each of us as parents, is a challenge. And it's only going to really happen if we carve out that time. We need to recognize its significance and importance, and we need to prioritize for it. And it may be that you can only spend one or two evenings a week with your children, or maybe you can spend 30 minutes every evening, or maybe you sit and plan a family vacation. Whatever it is, make it appropriate to the age and stage of your child. Find out what they like. When our children were little, it was Play-Doh and painting and Legos that they liked to do in the evening for 30 minutes or so. Now we have teenagers. Our son loves to take star photography, so now we're hiking out into the woods in the middle of the night to take star pictures. Make it relevant to them. Plan family vacations. It's something that you can all really enjoy. Putting the effort into the lives of our children by spending time with them will pay back in dividends as they get older, and we can have that relationship we long to have with them.
Single parents can be incredible parents, but you need to remember that you can't do everything by yourself. You can't have a full-time job. You can't have clubs that you go to. You can't have hobbies that you spend 85% of your time in and still parent. It's going to take some challenging decisions to be able to be what you need to be for those children. Remember, the best parents never parent alone. What you need is a good support group. Someone who's also a single parent who you can get together with, go to the park together with, so that you have someone to talk with and share. You need a great church behind you. In fact, I love the Titus 2 idea where it says you need to mentor the younger people. It gives the child that you are rearing another model to look at. And so, because you can't be everything to that child, and sometimes will get aggravated and frustrated, the child needs to have others that will mentor him. So again, if you're a single parent, you can do a great job. Just look around and see who God has provided to help you in the job that God has given you.
When my wife became pregnant with our first son, Levi, we were called by the Lord and impressed by the Lord to make a very firm decision, and that was that she would be a full-time parent. This was a scary thought for us at the time, because at the time we had two incomes, and we were living a standard American life, a middle-class home in the suburbs, and the question of really how can we afford to live on just one teacher's salary was a little intimidating. But the Lord opened the way. At this time, He also impressed us to move out of the city into the country. And this meant moving a little bit of a distance away from the city as well to find a home that was affordable. We wanted to live debt-free. We felt that we needed to live without a mortgage. And we had to redefine what our needs were, a painful process for each one of us. We ended up purchasing a home in the country that was a mobile home. Is that our dream home? No. But do our children know that they live in a mobile home? It doesn't matter. What are our needs? And you know what? When we sold our home in the suburbs, it was a $120,000 home. When we bought this place in the country, an hour outside of a major city, in the middle of Michigan, it's 9 acres with some apple trees and a pond and a big garden. This place only cost $47,000. You can live debt-free, very, very low standard of living, with the blessing of God all around you in nature, with work for our children to do. And it does take sacrifice to say we're going to live with one income. But pray and put that on the Lord and say, Lord, how will you provide for us if we're going to make this commitment? One of the hallmarks of the successful parents in the research was that they had intense commitment and unconditional love to their children. Their children knew beyond a shadow of a doubt that their parents loved them, period. Why does this even matter, and how do we develop this Christ-like atmosphere in our homes?
Well, you know, the very most important thing you can do is this. Children first fall in love with us, then with our God. If they don't fall in love with us, it's very unlikely they'll fall in love with our God. From the Adventist home, adapt yourselves to the children's needs and make them love you. You must win their affection if you would impress religious truth upon their hearts. That's how important love is. We must win our children's affection. If we're angry people, if we're harsh and we're severe, and we don't show love to our children, they will not learn to love our God either.
Unconditional love. It's a huge subject, and that's really what Scripture is all about. But what does it look like in everyday reality? And for me, I have had to make the decision as a dad, it does not matter what my children do. They can spit in my face, they can stamp on my toe, they can put a hole in my flat screen TV. It's not going to make any difference. By the grace of God, I am going to love them, and I am never going to let them go. That's the philosophy, that's the love that God has for us. And if we take that on board, if we make this decision, even if we've got little children, that there is nothing on earth they can do. They can throw a brick through my Porsche window. It's not going to make any difference. I will love them, I will love them, and I will keep on loving them. And eventually, when all their friends forsake them, they're going to come back to the one that unconditionally loved them. So parents, it's another decision that we have to make.
So I think it's very important for children to know that they are loved unconditionally by their parents. They don't have to be good to be loved. And oh my goodness, it's so easy for us parents to say, oh, you've been such a delightful, good kid today. I love you so much. And we put our expressions of love into the side of being good. And what do children get the idea about? Well, I'm only loved when I'm good.
Being a parent is the hugest, most massive thing we can ever do. It's the most important thing we can ever do. And it's extremely complex. And at the times when I sit and think, I don't know what to do, God, please help me. Help me know what to do and say to show these children my love and your love right now. And I would just sit there in God's lap and let him hug me as his child and listen to what he had to say to me. And the more I was topped up with God's love, the easier it was to pass that love on to my children. And when I get really stuck and something happens and I don't know what to do, there's a few places in the Bible I go to. I go to Psalm 103 and I read that. And for me, that is a beautiful picture of how God loves me. And I break that down into all the things that he does for me as a father and think, how can I do that for my child? I look at that the same way with 1 Corinthians 13 and Romans 12, because they give us such rich and succinct information about what a really good, strong, healthy relationship looks like. And then after I have really focused on that for a while, I find it gives me clarity about what do I do next with this child in this situation. I also love the story of the prodigal son. It gives me so much hope and so much inspiration. And the beautiful thing for me in that story is that the father has no words of criticism. Even when the son makes this foolish request to have all this money, he doesn't chide him. He is there all the time, looking for him, doing whatever it takes to show this son how much he loves him. And the reason the son comes back in the end, even though he wanders away for a while, is because he remembers how much his father loves him. And that's what I want my children to remember, how much I love them, how much their dad loves them, how much God loves them. And to keep that as the focus, because when all else fails, when life gets tough, if they even walk away for a while, what I want to bring them back is God's love, is my love, their father's love. And that for me is the whole focus of parenting.
One of the biggest questions parents are asking today is, how can I manage my children's behavior? What sort of discipline techniques should I be using to try to get them to behave? Well, really, I want to ask a question behind that question. A more foundational question is, are there reasons that our children are misbehaving that we are not yet aware of?
Many times, parents have come to my counseling office saying, oh, this and this and this and this and this and this and this is wrong with my child. And they have a litany of things, a whole long list of them. And I say to them, in the meantime, will you do one thing, just one thing for me, for your child? Will you find 15 minutes every day to do something with your child that your child wants to do? This is not teaching time. This is not scolding time. This is not any of those other things you do. This is just time for you to be with your child for 15 minutes, doing whatever your child wants to do. Now, they may look at you a little astonished the first day if you haven't been doing this, but pursue and say, every day we'll have our time. And do you know what happens? It has happened so many times as to be utterly amazing. They'll come back the next week and they'll say to me, you know, he's behaving ever so much better than he did. And a lot of those little things that were bothering them have dropped. Do you know why? Because they were all bids for attention. Children have a strong emotional need to connect with their parents. Now, as they grow older and become late childhood or teens, it doesn't have to be every single day. Maybe 2 or 3 times a week. You can play a game together, whatever they want to do. Well, we have 4 children. How am I going to do that for 4 children? Well, you can take turns. Dad connects with 2 and Mom connects with 2, and the next day with the opposite 2. But I really strongly suggest that you begin with all 4 of them, all 4 of your kids, 15 minutes each a day, because it will make such a difference in so many ways. You have met a strong emotional need of theirs.
The number one reason why children misbehave is because they have a need to be loved, to be appreciated, to have this focused attention, and they will misbehave in order to get it. You're busy, you don't pay any attention to the child for, 3 or 4 hours. He wants your attention. He picks up a block and throws it across the room, and it breaks a lamp or something. And now, you know what he gets? He gets your attention. But the problem is, it's negative attention. And negative attention doesn't last, it doesn't fill what I call the child's love cup. And when they get that concept, it's amazing the changes they can choose to make and how their behavior changes when you spend a little positive time with them, filling them up first.
How do you show children your love? When they want to talk to you and they want to say something, you stop, you look at them, you get down so you're closer on their eye level, you look at them, you smile, and you listen. And you might make an appropriate comment if one is needed. Burton White, who did a lot of research on young children before the age of 3, discovered that if we respond this way, this loving way, we stop what we're doing, we bend down and pay attention to the child when they come in and pull on you and want your attention. And just briefly, because they aren't going to stay there very long, they want to go back out and play. And we respond to them in that way, we actually increase their intelligence as well as their spiritual life.
A while back, my wife and I were really struggling with the behavior of our first son, Levi. And so we decided to try something. My wife and the baby left for an evening to go stay somewhere else, and it was just a daddy and son sleepover. One-on-one time, we called it. And we dragged the mattress out of the bedroom, put it in the living room. We did a fire in the fireplace for the first time and did everything that 2-year-olds enjoy. We ran around, kicked balls, played, jumped, sang songs, just had fun together, doing what the child wants to do. And it wasn't till the end of this time, after 24 hours of having no computer, no work, no cell phones, nothing but an individual focus on my son, I noticed that he actually had not misbehaved the entire time. During a time where we were already struggling with him. So powerful is the effect of attention, focus, interest, pouring our love into our children. They crave it. They need it in order to thrive.
We know that icebergs, what you see is just the tip of the iceberg. The whole rest of the iceberg is underneath water. What you see in terms of angry behavior is just the tip of the iceberg. But if we would take that iceberg and chop off the top of that iceberg and get rid of it, you can get an immediate change in the child's behavior. But what happens with the iceberg is something rights itself and something else will come out of the water. And what comes out of the water, if you have not met the child's need to be listened to be understood, to get those feelings taken care of and talked through, something else will come out of the water, and that will be basically revengeful behavior to get back at you. If you see behavior, emotional behavior that you don't like, immediately, instead of chipping away at the top, immediately go for what's underneath the surface, the feelings that are causing the behavior.
I think it's really important for us as parents to make a list of what these needs might be. What are our spiritual needs, our physical needs, our emotional needs? What are those for our children? What do they look like? And once we make a list of those and think about them and think, how do I meet this need as often as I can, then that helps you to have a focus and a clarity about what you're doing. Otherwise it feels a bit vague. I've especially found it useful to think about my children's emotional or relational needs. And these are their need for acceptance, to know that when they've messed up completely, however badly, I'm still going to love them. And that helps them to understand how much God accepts them. The next need is for affection. Just warm hug, kind words, just knowing that I love them, and that's a really important need as well. Then there's the need for attention, spending time in their world, focused on them. And that's like the way Jesus came down to this world to live with us. How can I do that for my child? To humble myself and enter their world and find out what it's really like there, and to take time to be with them and get to know them. Then there is comfort. How do I comfort my child when they're sad, when life is stressful and difficult, or when they're ill? How do they like to be comforted? What's the best way to comfort them? And how can I do that more to help them know that even when life really hurts, other people, their parents and God is there to comfort them. And when we comfort them when they're sad, that's how they learn to empathize with others and able to reach out to encourage and comfort others when they are sad as well. Then there's the need for encouragement. We all need to be encouraged. And encouragement is not encouraging my child towards what I want them to do, but it's finding out what my child's goals are and encouraging them towards that, especially when it's tough, when there's a piano exam coming up, or when they feel like they failed in their football game or something, and they just need that bit of extra encouragement to keep them on track and to not give up when things get a bit tough. I think respect is also an important need, and we often forget that we need to show respect for our children, for their thoughts, their ideas, their preferences. How do we show respect to them? Because they will only learn respect from us through the way that we show respect to them. So what does that look like? How do I honor my child above myself, as it says in Romans 12? What does that look like from parent to child? Then there's the need for support. That's just help. Our children need help with so many things, and I think we often forget how much help they need. When we tell a child, go and tidy your room, that's a really difficult thing to do. There's lots and lots of different skills involved in tidying a room. And sometimes we've never taken the time to teach our children what they are. So go into their room with them, help them tidy, show them how it works, show them how to tidy everything away and to find a place for everything, because then they won't feel disheartened. So they often need our support. What does that look like? If we were to say to them, how can I help you today? what would they say they would need from us, and how can we do that? We also need to make sure our children feel safe. Safe with us, safe with other people, and to be aware of what that looks like for them as well. So they don't feel threatened or afraid, because perfect love casts out fear. And how can I work alongside my child to help cast out their fear, but also help them to develop courage and bravery as well? So I think these relational needs that need someone else to do it for you. You know, you can't do these things on your own. You don't comfort yourself on your own or encourage yourself on your own. And it's very important for parents to be part of that process of meeting these relational needs for their children. And some parents have made a long list of these needs, and they say, we're going to try and do it every day. We're going to try and do one thing, say one thing that helps meet the emotional needs of our children, the relational needs of our children. And so that's something that I find is a very helpful way of looking at what do my children need emotionally and relationally, and how can I do that for them.
We show our love with hugs and with kisses and those kinds of things. We show our love with compliments, sincere compliments. Older children know when your compliment is sincere or not. You really have complimented them for something that they did well. They know they did it well. They know the difference.
You know, the reality remains, our children still have our DNA. Even if we are lavishing our attention on them, if we are filling their every emotional need, the will still rise up. The child will disobey and seek to supersede the will of the parent from time to time. How do we deal with this? We need to become authoritative parents, which means we have clearly defined limits for behaviors. They understand the rules, which are communicated very abundantly, and the consequences for breaking them. Logical consequences are also understood by the child. Listen to what our experts have to say about being an authoritative parent and imposing logical consequences.
Authoritative parents also have limits for their kids. Very consistent limits. They aren't wobbly limits, here one day and not the other. They're always there. If they have said, this is where the limit is, then that's where it is. Now, they establish those limits with much communication. They talk to their kids. They explain why this is the way it should go. And they are reasonable, but there are well understood consequences for passing those limits.
I remember when my daughter was, I guess, 2 and 3. My oldest was 3. She used to fold clothes and do little things around the house. We gave them washcloths, simple things that they could do. And one day she just decided she didn't want to work anymore. And she came to me and she told me she didn't want to make her bed anymore and she didn't want to do the laundry anymore. And I just said, okay. And she decided this was working so well, she was going to run to her little sister and let her little sister know this is working. And so told her little sister, you need to go tell Mommy all the things you don't want to do either. So she ran to me and said, Mommy, I don't want to do this and I don't want to do that. And I said, okay. And then what I did is I took them through the house. I said, well, come with me and I want to show you what happens in a day. I went to the refrigerator, I opened the door, and I showed them this is the food that we have in the refrigerator. Now let's go open up the cabinet and I want to show you where I keep my pots and pans. And I'm going to show you how to cook. And so I started showing them how to cook simple meals. And then I took them to the laundry room and I showed them how to use the washer and how to load it, how to turn on the dryer. And after I got done showing them all the things of the house, I told them that because they didn't want to help me, they could take care of all their own food, they could take care of all their own laundry, and that Daddy and I are going to work together. So I'm still going to do his laundry and his food because he's out working for me, and we want to work together. But because you don't want to work together, each of you can do your own work. And then my littlest one, Autumn, turned to Stacy and she said, now look what you did. You just got us in trouble. How could you even do that? Now what are we going to do? I don't want to have to do all this work myself. And they said, could we change our minds? And I said, well, sure. Would you like to do the laundry for me? Would you like to work with me? I liked it. I thought it was working very well for our family, and I would prefer to do that. What do you think? And they decided, oh, great, they want to do that. They ran off, cleaned up their rooms, did their laundry, never complained again about working in the house. Now, that's a logical consequence. that I was giving them. And that's what we need to do with our children. Give them logical consequences.
Cause and effect, an important concept for children to learn. But we learn how to give positive consequences so that they fit what the child has done. If the child spills the milk, you don't send him to his room. You know, you say, hey, here's a washcloth, clean up the mess. And so what you impose in terms of a consequence fits the crime, fits the misbehavior. So you got to balance these two. Unconditional love, but the child has to know there are consequences for wrong behavior. We need to learn from what we've done, and the way we do it is through consequences. I always say, if you really want to take this through to that 18, 20 year of age, say to the child as he's getting older, what do you think? I need to teach you a lesson, you know, so this doesn't happen again. What do you think an appropriate consequence would be so that you would remember to think twice, to do what you should do, to do what you know is right, and not make the same mistake? And it's amazing how hard the kids will be on themselves. Oh, I don't think I should go have my bicycle for 2 weeks or something like that, you know.
Indeed, we need to get a little bit creative with our consequences. Many of us, perhaps out of laziness, just resort to the same consequence for every misbehavior. Every disobedience receives the spanking. Every infraction receives the timeout. But what if we got more creative? The child throws the ball in the house when he's not supposed to. What do? Well, take the ball away, place it up on top of the refrigerator where he can see it, and he's not allowed to play with balls for the next 24 hours. Then the child begins to link the misbehavior with the consequence, and a learning process starts. Discipline means to teach, to help them to learn. And yes, it is painful, but we don't just impose punishments for the sake of pain in and of itself. We want them to learn true obedience. Stick around for part 2 of How to Raise the Remnant, and we're going to examine the most important factors by far for raising spiritually strong young adults.